Hello everyone. In this episode, we're going to break down the first episode of Ms. Marvel. Jumping right in, the episode is titled Generation Y, spelled W-H-Y. Not only referring to how young she is compared to all the other superheroes, but also the new Young Avengers team that they're setting up within the MCU, by introducing characters like Kate Bishop's Hawkeye and Billy and Tommy from WandaVision. Within the MCU intro, a couple of new scenes were added. One being from Moon Knight, which is his first title card entrance, and a clip of Doctor Strange from Multiverse of Madness. The flashing Ms. Marvel title cards in different fonts is very reminiscent of the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse style. A lot of this series is actually quite similar to the MCU Spider-Man films, like with Kamala creating a lot of her own problems and really just trying to find her place as a young superhero in high school. In the comics, Kamala is known for writing a ton of fan art for our heroes. In the MCU, however, she appears to be a YouTuber instead, which actually makes a lot of sense. The first video we see from her is a retelling of the battle in Avengers Endgame, confirming that it's entirely public knowledge now. All of this is made out of what seems to be cardboard, including smoothies from the Circle Q that are mentioned later in the episode. Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, also has a podcast now, titled Big Me, Little Me, where he most likely talks too much about his adventures and informs the public on what's going on. Then, we're introduced to her favorite hero, Captain Marvel. The cutout acknowledges the different haircuts she's had throughout the comics and the MCU, as well as her entrance into that final endgame battle. But of course, Kamala doesn't talk about how she got completely rocked by Thanos rather than beating him with the final blow. She does refer to her as Earth's mightiest hero, which is often what the Avengers were deemed in the comics. The same phrase recently appeared on Thor's hat in Thor Love and Thunder during his workout montage, and in Doctor Strange on the memorial statue in Multiverse of Madness. Speaking of Thor, she goes on to mention that he might be a gamer, which I'm sure many who came upon him in Fortnite talked about during that phase of his life. I found it pretty cool that instead of just referencing the normal Avengers lineup, she even added Pepper Potts in her rescue armor, especially since it was her first time joining the Avengers in a fight. The name of her YouTube channel is called Sloth Baby Productions, where among her storytelling and theory videos, we see others that reference Ant-Man, the Wasp, and Spider-Man. She drops her YouTube videos every Wednesday, just like how this series does on Disney+. I'm really liking the transitions. Normally fast-paced isn't necessarily the move to kind of allow things to breathe, but they're handling it really well and it keeps your attention. It's straight out of a high schooler's mind with numerous drawings and doodles. One of my favorites was having Captain Marvel fly alongside the car. It reminded me of how I used to always have a stick figure parkour on objects as we drove by, or the Flash running. And then we're introduced to Bruno, her guy in the chair similar to Ned from the Spider-Man trilogy. Except he's into creating his own tech. The actor actually auditioned for Peter Parker, and he even sounds like Tom Holland to me, especially when he references Darth Vader, so he could have been a really solid alternative. And of course, there's a Star Wars reference since Disney also owns that property. Just like in the Moon Knight series, there's a QR code in the Circle Q shop that takes you to the comic book origins of Ms. Marvel. Something the show has changed quite a bit to fit into the MCU. In the comics, she's deemed an Inhuman and unlocked her powers after being exposed to what's called the Terrigen Mist. Her abilities are similar to Mr. Fantastic's in the sense that she can expand her limbs and even grow in size, where she likes to use the term embiggen. So keep an eye out for that term in this series. Now, as she's daydreaming, we see a few really cool superhero combos that are mixed with Captain Marvel. These immediately reminded me of the scrapped Iron Mage concept that was going to be in Infinity War, where Doctor Strange was going to wear the Iron Man suit and Tony Stark was going to wear his cloak of levitation, which is a scene I still wish we could have saw. There's also a Marvel Zombies reference, just like from the What If animated show and popular storylines from the comics. This concept is even getting its own show on Disney+. When Kamala first gets her hands on the bangles, her mom acts pretty suspicious, taking them away immediately. It seems like she's hiding some knowledge about the bracelets. Maybe she knows one of the previous wearers in her family. Following this, there's some really cool imagery where there's more bangles on the wall as they go shopping, and then as Kamala wears some. Talking about Bruno, he continues to remind me of Spidey as he shows his intellect, especially when he created Zuzu, which is likely a rip on Siri. The texting transitions are so interesting to see play out along different environments. Instead of, say, just a text bubble popping on screen, they really incorporated the landscape and the surroundings into the series, which just adds a bit of life and more spectacle to everything going on. If you've ever played or seen gameplay of the Avengers video game, you'll notice quite a few similarities with this show, considering it starts out with Kamala gaining her powers after attending a similar Avengers Con event. As for her family, I loved meeting them. They seem very on point within their roles, and I actually find them all quite entertaining. Especially the dad, as he really supports his daughter's interest as he dresses up as their version of the Hulk. On the rooftops, the Electric Company sign has a similar logo to the one she'll eventually wear on her Miss Marvel costume. Maybe it'll be related to why she dons the logo, or it's just a nice simple Easter egg. And back to how Bruno is like her guy in the chair. He creates what is called photon gloves for her costume. Photon is the name Monica Rambeau goes by in the comics, and may as well in the upcoming The Marvels movie. In her room, among the numerous Captain Marvel and Avengers merch, there's even a real-world Captain Marvel promo poster on her wall. Then after she suits up, and they're on their way to Avengers Con, on the bus, we see a really cool cosplay of the backup dancers from Captain America's first film. Later, we even see the backup dancers for Iron Man from his second movie. And speaking of Captain America, the Avengers Con takes place at the same location Camp Lehigh once was, where we followed a lot of Captain America's journey. In the first Avenger, it's where he trained. In The Winter Soldier, him and Natasha revisit it. And in Endgame, they go back to it during the time heist for more Pym particles. As previously mentioned, this series takes a bit of a turn when it comes to her powers. Now, while we don't know the exact name for the bangle she wears, it could be based on what's known as the negabands in the comics. In the show, they basically help her create constructs known as hard light, similar to Green Lantern's powers. Among the crowd, we see cosplayers that go beyond the traditional roster of the Avengers and expand onto other characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy. Some can even be seen wearing traditional Wakandan attire. One of the most notable cosplays I saw appeared to be someone as Thor, but he had combs as the helmet wings on the side of his head. It's pretty creative. Calling back to Endgame, there's a picture talking about America's ass, which is what Ant-Man said to Cap and most likely revealed on his podcast. There's also a memorial for Black Widow and Iron Man. Pretty sure this is the first time we've seen one for Black Widow and had her death acknowledged, really, to the public. But no Vision, of course. One of the shirts for sale says Asgard Pride on it, most likely a reference to King Valkyrie, if not something they often sell at New Asgard since it's now a tourist attraction. During the planning montage, we get a glimpse of Bruno cosplaying as Iron Man, which makes sense. But in reality, he dresses as a simple Bruce Banner. Probably because he spent most of his time working on Kamala's suit rather than his own. Now that's just sad. And sweet. It's hard to tell so far if she'll be called an Inhuman or a mutant in this series, since we were just introduced to the Inhuman Black Bolt in Multiverse of Madness. Either way, it seems that the power is already inside of her, with the bangle just kind of bringing it out for now. Maybe by the end of the series, she won't need it anymore and can just manifest her powers on her own. For now, though, the bands can be seen messing with the electronics and lights around her, maybe even absorbing some of their energy. If this is the case, when she's around Captain Marvel, she could get a serious power up, especially when she goes binary. The Blinding Light song by The Weeknd now makes much more sense with how her abilities are being depicted too. As for the place she went after putting the bangle on, it appears to transport her consciousness into another plane of existence. Or maybe it's simply showing everyone who has used it before. Kind of like an Avatar The Last Airbender type thing where she can go to them for help. On Bruno's bicycle seat, there's a picture of a typical alien on it, which is possibly a hint at how he may see some Kree or Skrull activity going on this season, especially before she sets off on her journey in the Marvels. Then, as the end credits play, we see numerous images relating back to her life, like sloths for her YouTube channel, blinding neon lights, the Avengers logo, and even art ripped right out of the comics. There's also a moving truck titled Trust a Bro from the Hawkeye series. Ending the episode with a post-credit scene, we see Agent P. Cleary from Spider-Man No Way Home. He works for the Department of Damage Control and will most likely be an antagonist of the series, possibly even being a Skrull in disguise. But that's yet to be revealed. And that's everything I found in this first episode. I'm sure there's a ton of smaller things to find, especially at Avengers Con. But what did you think? Will you be watching more of this show? Comment your thoughts below, because I'd love to hear them. And that's that. See ya.